Good evening, everyone. I'll call to order this committee of the whole meeting of the Council of the Town of Saugeen Shores and welcome all committee members and welcome everyone who's watching us via the live stream this evening. The second item is disclosures of pecuniary interest. I'll ask any member if you have one of those you'd like to declare. Councillor Smith.
Yes, I'll be declaring a pecuniary interest rather on agenda item 5.1, delegation related to the CCV. My husband, Ryan Smith, is a part owner of the Social Athletics of Saugeen Shores.
Thank you. Other pecuniary interests? Don't see any. So of course you can declare one of those anytime if you need to. We have no additions, deletions, amendments. We have no open forum requests. We do have 3 delegations and council has a pretty full agenda this evening. So we will be asking all the delegations to hold as closely to the 10-minute time frame as possible. I certainly appreciate your help in those lines. And our first delegation is from Mr. Paul Luco, and he's here to talk to us about the CCV development. Mr. Luco. Oh, you're still muted there, Mr. Luco. Oh, there you go.
Are we good to go now?
Yep, we got you.
Okay, thank you. First of all, thank you for your time. I've got a lot to cover, so I will do it as quickly as possible, and I appreciate that you all guys are all giving up your valuable time. So first thing is, it's really about the busy times of the year and the access to the main beach. I want to say that I support progress, but I don't support it blindly. I want to say that this is just not another CCV presentation. It really is about public access to the Port Elgin main beach area now and in the future. So during many of the meetings, and I've watched many of them, concerns have been raised and statements and/or opinion have been given in response. What I've rarely heard is, and here's my data to support my comment. So in the absence of this data, I have taken the initiative to create the following presentation. Looking ahead, I'm sure town staff will provide a far more detailed and professional report than I can do here with my abilities and limitations. 3 comments have resonated with me over this whole process. Busy place, go somewhere else. Parking is a non-issue on most days, and the term parking efficiencies is used to basically explain all the issues about parking. Key phrase out of this whole presentation is data before decisions, please. Okay. Typical summer day, I got a lot of information, many sources. I use Google Maps a lot. This indicates just a common busy day in the summertime. Very little surplus of parking. I just wanted to make a point that these 2 areas here, the parking is already gone. And I also wanted to make a comment that the CAO had said that parking is only an issue a couple days a year. What's really important is how many spots are available on those days.
Mr. Mayor, would Mr. Luco like to share his screen?
I did.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry, Mr. Luco, you're not sure. We don't see your screen there, so I didn't. I was thinking you weren't going to do that, but if you would like to do that.
Sarah, is she there?
She's sharing again here now, and we're on slide 3. We're looking at slide 3.
Okay, let's take a shot at this then.
Okay.
Okay, so slide 3, I just wanted to use this as an indication that basically all maps and drawings I've used for this presentation are to scale, and that's what I wanted to make a point out of this. Please continue, Sarah. Just at the bottom of this slide, there's a picture showing basically if the town's not careful about how we plan this main beach area, the consequences could be pretty significant, and I don't think there's anything that most people would like about that type of consequence. Next, please, Sarah. I just wanted to show here that I did all my research and I went out and I did comparables to different communities in the area just to see what their bylaws and what their requirements were for similar facilities. Just dealing with the banquet halls, what you see on the screen, I have not taken into account the restaurant and all the amenities of the village that will all require additional parking. Okay, Sarah, please. This slide just gives you a clear indication that basically, due to the construction of the CCV, we're going to lose 170 spots. We're going to gain about 170 spots. So in that particular area of the main beach, we're pretty well a zero sum for if you want to talk about parking gains. Okay. Okay, bylaws that I looked at, reference to this issue. Key one at the bottom right in red is specific use for each spot. no sharing when calculating minimums. So basically you can't double down on parking spots. They're for one purpose only when you're doing the calculations according to the bylaw. And the science that has come up with these numbers applies. It might not in this area, depending on how, you know, we want to dictate sharing public parking, but the science to determine the number of parking spots per facility is accurate and does apply, and it's used everywhere. Next one, please. This is just an indication of the reality, a visual look at what demands from the CCV will look like on our beach. And basically, for what it provides, it takes away. And if you get into the orange arrows, it actually starts to encroach on traditional parking for beachgoers. So it's quite a significant negative effect unless we do anything we can to accommodate it. So my question is, from the lease, what does the town consider reasonable or even possible in this mode of sharing parking with this huge facility? Okay, please carry on. This is actually potentially even a little bit easier to go through. So we got an estimate the last time, or one of the last meetings, from the developer saying he was questioned about the capacity of the banquet hall. He threw out a number of 250 in a roundtable setting. So I took that number, I went to numerous banquet calculators, and I looked at how many square meters would be required, or how many square feet for that many people in that particular setup. And then I took that number and I said, okay, what would it look like in other venues? And as you can see, depending on the venue, that 250 can expand to 350, 400 people if you're using different venues. And I think that's a really critical thing to look at. True numbers have to be used for true calculations. Thank you, Sarah. Okay, space and demand, please. Next one, Sarah. On this slide, I just want to show that increased demand comes from many, many directions around town. And outside of town, I pulled up from the Saugeen Shores websites all developments that are in the mix. And we're looking at about 2,500, I believe it's 2,500 new units in the next little while. But that's a pretty substantial increase in demand on our beach areas. Also looked at, basically, we're going to have more people drawing to that waterfront due to the promenade and the white break wall. And then also a comment made by the developer saying in the first year of operations, he expects 72,000 more visitors to the beach area. Again, we have to accommodate this growth. Thank you, Sarah. Next, please. Okay, I just did some quick calculations looking at the size of the beach now and how many families it can support. And the numbers there, I believe it's 7,000. Sarah can go to the next one. And then back up one, please, Sarah. Hopefully I've got the right one. The next slide was about, we're all talking about the water levels lowering. And I just wanted to make a very clear point that for every 10 meters of beach we gain, we get 50% more area for people to use. Again, a really significant increase in demand and usage, and we've got to figure out a way to accommodate those people. Okay, sir? Just want to show on this slide, I pulled information from our waterfront plan and the Port Elgin Main Beach report, and I just wanted to show that really look at the numbers on the left in red, and you look at the picture on the right circle, that in reality, this waterfront plan is out of date when it comes to dealing with future demand, even present needs. Okay. Quick comment was made during one of the meetings about we're going to be okay with the CCV construction in 2021 because it's going to have a much less effect on the beach than the break wall would. And I just wanted to bring it out, you know, looking at numbers, the amount of beach we lost, the amount of parking spots we lost, compared with the amount of parking spots we're going to lose during the CCV construction. So really significant difference, higher impact with the construction project. Again, we really have to look at the effects before we make these decisions. Okay, please, Sarah. Okay. Again, this is the one that really, really gets to me, but busy place, we're going to go somewhere else. Pretty impactful statement. Whether it's because people want to or they have to, families are going to have to leave the best beach on the coast for something less. So whether we drive them out or they choose to go out, they're going to something less. Next slide, Sarah. Okay, the next couple slides are about reasonable walking distance is required for families to access the beach. The Port Elgin Main Beach, that's what it's all about. Best beach, best access for families who don't own waterfront property. Anything else in our community is less. Less access, less parking, the quality of the beach is less, and there's less room for improvements in those areas. So, you know, if you're looking for ways to accommodate, we're very restrictive in these other areas. Please go ahead, Sarah. A couple other options that are available to us, just, you know, on the edge of town, Edith's Grove and Galway's Grove. Galway's Grove is always jammed up every day in the summer. There's no room for expansion there. And Edith's, there's about a 1 meter stretch of beach from the grass to the waterfront. That's why it's not as busy. So, and very, very few amenities at Edith's Grove. So if we're really looking at other areas, there is a limit of accessible beach for non-waterfront owners in our community. And I also want to just make the comment that our Port Elgin Main Beach, that's our Niagara Falls, that's our Grand Canyon. And we got to protect it. We got to make it accessible to as many people as we can as a beach. Thank you, Sarah. Okay, parking limitations. I went through all the parking maps for Saugeen Shores, and a common thread for all the maps, if you take a look at that, is anywhere near a beach access point, there is parking restrictions. So we're going to try and accommodate the growth from the main beach somewhere else. We're going to have to make a lot of changes in our parking in the other parts of our community. Keep going, Sarah. Just I focused it on the main beach area, and I just wanted you to really see the parking restrictions close to the main beach. Again, really significant, and they have to be changed if we can't accommodate the increased growth in parking by traditional means. Okay, Sarah? Just wanted to take a look at this specific area on the South Beach. Again, apologies to any property owners that might be affected by this slide. It's just simply when you're faced with having something as big as a CCV introduced into the beach, we have to look at all options for growth and parking and accommodation. And basically, this is one of the areas there's a little bit of room for growth, even though it might not be popular for some people. And then just a little corner, left corner, circled in red, we've lost the parking on the beach, and I don't think it's coming back. I mean, we gotta be always aware of the water levels and environmental. I don't think we're ever going back to parking on the beach. Okay, Sarah? Parking efficiencies, another wonderful term. Bottom left corner, I took all data from our bylaws and I calculated out what it would require for 2 parking spots in the aisle between them. I took that information, put it over on the other side and figured out, okay, how many parking spots, if we line them up edge to edge to edge, could we possibly get into that spot? And if you have no aisles, no walkways, no anything, you're about a gain of about 30 or 40 spots. And that's realistically is you're probably about, it is what it is. Okay, Sarah? This one I just wanted to show you, you know, we have to accommodate growth somewhere. The blue squares are looking at the first 5 years, and I very conservatively said, oh, let's just say we need 10 more spots a year. And that's what it looks like. Left side is on the beach where we have the traditional parking. Right side is where if we had room for growth, that's where it would end up. The orange is the next 5 years. So again, that's just basically 10 spots for 10 years. That's a pretty significant impact on that area without anything else being introduced. Okay, next, Sarah. Click one more time, or I just wanted to show this slide here. No, back, sorry, Sarah, back one. Basically, if we can't accommodate it in the main beach parking lot, we're going into the neighborhood and we're gonna have to change parking restrictions and we're gonna have people parking all the way, everywhere around the area, all the way up to Highland, up the hill, just to get access to the beach. That's what the future looks like if we don't do this properly. Thank you, Sarah. Just dug into numbers, looking at what's in our parking maps versus Google Maps versus what are actuals out there. If we're looking at efficiencies, if the town comes or someone comes back and says we've gained efficiencies, it's got to be on the numbers that are relative right now. Your map says 270. You look at Google Maps, you can count cars, and there's 385 cars in that area that says 270. So any gains have got to be against that 385, not against the 270. Okay, Sarah. You know what? I'm going to just a couple comments on this one. The top left corner is basically, I'm going to go back to data before decisions. You gotta have the information before you make the decision. And then I go to the bottom right corner, is basically, you know what, we got an election coming up next year. Let's give democracy a chance. We all support it. And I just have that little corner green one that even, Pierre Denini very clearly at one of the meetings, he, raw support, huge to democracy. So we're all on the same table. We all believe democracy works and we all believe it should be given a chance. Thank you, Sarah.
We're just coming up on 15 minutes there, Mr. Luco, so we need you to wrap it up, please.
Okay, so basically, well, and you have to give me a bit of time here, Mayor, because we have had technical issues, but I appreciate the notice. I guess what I want to just say is, COVID, it's not over yet. We still have to deal with it, and I think we're all naive if we thought that COVID would have no effect on our opinion of what goes on at the main beach. And the next one is, critical decision is coming up. The town has absolute discretion on the schedule and the final bill. And I challenge the town to look at this, the use of their absolute discretion to make sure they are doing it and protecting the best interest and protection of our town and the growth of our town. Last comment I want to say is I haven't seen anything at this point that could dispute what I presented, but I'm more than willing to, put it out there to say, please support, dispute, challenge the data that I provided today. I've done my best to do it as accurately as possible. Last comment, Mr. Mayor, is I am sending out 2 letters to the town clerk. The first one is I'm asking that we have a delay start in the construction of the CCV until the end of this summer. Delays have already been approved for late deposits, late extensions, late final plans and schedule. The whole country is trying to save small businesses. We have to do everything we can to allow the businesses that are presently at the main beach to survive and flourish. They suffered through COVID. They've suffered through the construction in 2020. I think it's only reasonable to ask for that extension. So that's the first letter. And the second letter, basically, I'm asking is until we have an approved or a proper documented report from the town, I don't think the schedule should be approved until we have the data to make that decision. And I think that's it. The 2 letters are attached to the back of my presentation for people to read. I please ask that you go through my presentation and give it the time that it is justified. And I guess that's all I got, and I'm open to questions, concerns.
Great, thank you, Mr. Luco, and I'm sure there'll be some questions. We'll start with the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Luco, thank you for your presentation. I have a couple questions for you. One, where did you come up with the statement that if you don't like it, go somewhere else?
It was the past CAO made it in one of the first meetings, and I don't know if it's televised or not. Very clearly, he was asked about how busy it was and stuff like that, and it was very clearly the main Port Elgin Beach is going to become a very busy place. If you don't like it, you're going to have to go somewhere else.
Okay, so you realize we have about 17 kilometers of beach. You failed to mention Southampton, which has 4 or 5 different sections of beach. Heights and Gobles, which although parking is limited, it is full, but I worry about that part of it, that you neglected that part. My main question.
Just to reply to that, I know we have 18 kilometers of waterfront, but we do not have 18 kilometers of beach that is readily accessible to families. You know what it's like to take families to the beach, what you have to do, what you have to drag. It has to be accessible for the families to use it. The second thing is none of the other beaches, maybe with the exception of Gobles, has anywhere near the quality of the beach for families as does the main Port Elgin Beach.
Have you ever been to Southampton?
So guys, we're not going to debate the
No.
delegation here.
Sorry.
So we're not going to have a debate back and forth. The chair will recognize you when you get the chance to speak. And the Deputy Mayor has the floor. Deputy Mayor, do you have any further questions?
I have one, yes. So Mr. Luco, my question is, what is it that you're hoping to get with your presentation? As I said, it was well informed, it was well presented, but you forget that council's not in the business of saying what business can and cannot operate in town. We're here to help businesses function. The mayor's task force has been working very hard for the last year to ensure that all businesses in town have a fair shake and are getting what they need to succeed. Why do you not want to have this business start when, if we postpone the development, that just adds cost to their charges, because you're now out of the building season and it adds charges to them.
Mr. Luco?
I've responded to the beaches, and I will say you cannot compare the Southampton beaches to the Port Elgin Main Beach. End of that. The second thing, what I would like to get out of this presentation is basically just to say, if we are making decisions, make them on data, present this data to the public so we can see why you've justified your decision. I am for progress. I am for growth at the main beach. I just want to make sure that basically the consequences of this project are fully understood by all, the public is aware of them, and what actually fits the beach. And you know, if we come through with all the information in the end and there's data that says this is going to fit and this will not affect the neighborhoods around it and there will not be pushing people away from the main beach, then we've done due diligence to say to the town, we have done our due diligence to protect the assets of the town.
Well, I
Okay,
thank you. Sorry, Mr. Mayor, just last comment. I thank you for your presentation again. And I just want to assure you that this council has done its due diligence. We've worked very hard. We've investigated, and we do believe we're doing what is best for the town.
Okay, thank you. I think I saw Councillor Mayette, and then I'll get Councillor Schreider.
Sorry, Mr.
I got the councillor has the floor, Mr. Luco, and then I'm sure he'll have a question for you.
Okay,
Councillor
thank you.
Mayette.
Appreciate
Thank you,
it.
Mr. Mayor, and through you. And thank you, Mr. Luco, for your presentation. Obviously, you put quite a bit of work and research into it. I liked particularly the part where you said real calculations require real numbers. And I wish there were more real numbers used. You used a lot of about and approximately and whereabouts. And so I'm not sure that calculations work out, but you've clearly put some work into it. At Gobles Grove, it's pronounced Gobles, and Eitz Grove. Those are two wonderful beaches. I wouldn't put them second to Port Elgin Beach anytime. They do lack in some of the amenities, but those are the types of beaches that families like to go to. But my question is, bottom line, you, it seems to me, have an objective to stop this development until 2022, which is an election year. When we've heard this, not only from you, but several of the opponents to this project, and if you're looking for absolute data that it's going to say this is exactly what the consequences of this development is going to be, and this is exactly going to be the impact on parking, and this is exactly what's going to happen to the number of people and number of square feet, that data doesn't exist. And you can crunch numbers all you want, but the truth is this development is going to go ahead. How it has impact in the future, we can estimate and we can hope for the best, and we can do our best calculations, but nobody really knows what the infinite effect is going to be. We can put the ducks in a row as best that we can, and I think that we've exhausted just about every avenue and every possible scenario that we possibly can over the past several years, coming up with concepts and site plans, and I'm looking very forward to a site plan to be approved and shovels in the ground early this spring. But thank you very much for bringing out your presentation anyway.
Okay, did you have a comment, Mr. Luco?
Yes, I guess respectively, stating what my intentions are is really an opinion. Again, it's not based on fact.
It's in the letter you wrote.
Dave,
In the letter you wrote.
Councillor Mayette,
Yeah.
please.
I
No, Mr. Luco has the floor. Mr. Luco.
I appreciate that. Thank you. It's not about delaying it just for the sense of delaying it. It's about making decisions in the right order. And again, data is there. I mean, you can forecast, you know, the town has far more access to information than I do. I did the best I can, but I believe my numbers can be validated. I'm not looking to delay things until election. You know what? If there was a restaurant on the beach tomorrow, I would be down there with a glass of wine in my hand, enjoying it. If there was a dance hall down there, I would be down there with my dancing shoes, and I would enjoy what it could provide for myself, my family, the town. It's really about finding something that fits in that area. It's a finite area with finite resources, and we have to be extremely careful. I'm only coming at this from the best interest of the town and the community.
Thank you. I think I had Councillor Schreider next. Councillor Schreider.
Thank you, and through you, and thank you again, Paul. I know we've exchanged emails
information, but your, as my fellow counselors have said, your preparation is very respectable. So I appreciate that very much. I'll go back to the comments on the beaches as well, as that I have said before, we have 18 kilometers of beach or waterfront. I do understand that not all of it is accessible, but each beach offers a different experience. I believe I've said this before as well, as if I'm in the mood to be around maybe a busier scene and watch beach volleyball and French fries and ice cream, then maybe Port Elgin is the one where I'm going to go to. If I feel like something else, then Gobles Grove or Ikes Grove or maybe Southampton Beach as well. So I think that we're very fortunate and we're the envy of other municipalities because we do have so many different experiences along our waterfront. And not one is better than the other, not at all, not in my opinion. I think that parking, and you've talked to about parking quite a bit. So maybe a question to Kara or Phil or Amanda, and I'm not sure, maybe Kara can decide who handles them. But with regards to parking, maybe for everybody's information, if you could just, I have two questions, if you don't mind. So parking at the Port Elgin waterfront has been a concern. So south of Green Street, the main beach, and now also within the area of the CCV development. Can you explain or how will parking issues between Green and Izzard, so the south end of Port Elgin Beach, with the Harbor Street sanitary trunk replacement project that is happening and some of that planning, will there be public consultation for that project? And will beach parking, drop-off zone, traffic flows? Because I think that that's a common theme along that whole area of the Port Elgin waterfront. So maybe we could start with that question, then I just have a second question.
Sure, the CAO.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor, and Amanda is on the line in case I don't get all the details of this clear, but your question sounded like it was specifically, Councillor Strider, with regards to the Green Street to Izzard work that's going on there. And it is a municipal Class EA process that we're doing in order to advance that work. The work has been somewhat staged in response to the CCV proposal. So we want to be mindful that all of this needs to come together at the right time in the right way. So we are looking at what's the best way to sort of phase that work. So in my mind, that we're going to be looking at the parking lot directly related to the CCV, and at the same time looking at Harbor Street and that southern extension that you're talking about, Green down to Izzard, at the same time. Through that municipal Class EA process, there is a public consultation component that's included in that. So there will be outreach to the public. And if the mayor would like, Amanda could give a bit more detail on the timing we're thinking regarding that.
Sure. The Director of Infrastructure and Development.
Thank you, and through you. Yes, we had started the public consultation on that project a couple of years ago, but paused when we wanted to reconfirm the size of the sanitary sewer for other development in the south end. So we have that answer now. So our goal is to move forward with that in this summer. So we would come out with a public information center for what we are looking at doing from the Green Street intersection down, but we will all tie it in so that we can see the impact of all the parking. The idea is that we would come back with the existing condition and one or two concepts at that time as what we could do in that area. Community services and engineering staff are working together to put the sanitary sewer and the parking and road layout ideas all together. We still have a consultant retained for that work as well. So I'd say July, you'll see something July, August this year.
That's perfect. If I may do one follow-up,
Yeah, sure.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Thank you, Kara and Amanda, for that. So really, you're not looking at the south end and that there's parking problems down there and you're just looking in a silo and dealing with that. You're looking at that whole waterfront area of that Port Elgin main beach. And I guess with that too, is that we, a couple of months ago, we had the transportation master plan study that was done, and it's a great document. And so when we're developing new parking lots or improving other parking lots, or where we have issues, so roads or walkways, drop-off zones, traffic flow, how does those developments or that public consultation, how does that fit into the transportation master plan, or how does it support at least some of these developments that we have, even along either Harbor Street or in the CCD development with the new parking lot?
CAO or the director? The director?
Thank you, and through you. The transportation master plan is really just an overarching guideline, but so it doesn't specifically address parking on developments. What it does do is give us a policy on when to require a traffic impact analysis. So when we see a number of trips generating, or if we know there's issues offsite that we want the developer to contribute to. In this area as well, when we look at the intersections, we'd be looking at those stop control analysis. We also will look at the goals of the cycling in the transportation master plan and the pedestrian pathways. So these are areas that are identified for those that we would then take into consideration or into this area, as well as those street classifications like the cottage lane, the local roads, those sorts of things when it comes to the urban design of the roads. Is that?
Yeah,
what you're
no,
asking?
that's perfect. Yeah, I know. I appreciate that. And thank you again, Paul. I appreciate your presentation.
Thank you.
So we have gone on half an hour on this one so far. So if are there any other quick comments, the Vice Deputy Mayor?
I know we've got on. I didn't want to go without saying, Mr. Luco, you did a tremendous amount of work on this. I don't know how many hours you put into your presentation, but you did an awful lot of work. And I just wanted to point you to a site, Paul, is the Sierra Army Corps of Engineer, and you might want to read up. It's a heading is Great Lakes water levels starting to show hints of good news. And if you read the article, and it's first of all, I'm just referring to look it up here, but the Global's Grove, you talked about your 1 meter in your report, Paul. I live down here, and walked that beach a lot late in the year, and January is nice days to walk. It's 10 meters now, Paul. And I know it's winter time, but when I walked it, the waves hadn't stopped yet. The waves were still coming up on shore. So it's a good sign that, that 1 meter, you could hardly sit on that beach last year. There's 10 meters of sand now, which, and they do drop in the fall and winter, obviously, but it says here in the article that water forecast verifies those along the shorelines of Lake Huron will be able to breathe a sigh of relief coming up. So that's a piece of good news, Paul. It's the Army Corps of Engineers. You might want to look at that site, and it is good, valuable information. The other thing I wanted to mention, Mr. Mayor, is that, parking obviously is a big issue with people. And, I'm of the opinion maybe that, we might not be able to replace one spot for one spot. I have a question for the COE here in a second, but I think it'd be nice to have the right landscaping, the trail linkages, the bike parking, the parking lot right in the proper area of the beach, may not be equal to what we've got now. But, so I just wondering, Kara, and maybe this is the Jane Dudlowski question, our Director of Community Services, but the area, the Harbor Green area, is it a possibility, Jane or Kara, that parking perhaps could be expanded in the Harbor Green area where you put in 30, 40 spots, and maybe a shuttle. I mean, I think we have to think outside the box here too about parking. Is that, maybe the Harbor Green is developed and you actually shuttle people. I'm not trying to find all the answers tonight. I'm just asking staff to go back and consider it, Jane, when the whole parking question is being addressed with what the town has to do. So is that a possibility, Jane, that parking, I know we're addressing Green Street, South Gizzard, is there a possibility that parking could be added in the Harbor Green area?
Director.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Mayor, the 5-year capital forecast does recognize expansion for the North Shore parking lot at the harbor. We already have the infrastructure for a trail system that links the beach to that North Shore.
Okay.
So certainly it is something we have been thinking about for some time to accommodate not only the boaters, but for our additional users of the beach.
Okay, because 20, 30, 40 spots here and there. It all adds up, and I'm not sure Paul had that in his calculation, but maybe, I think as a staff, we're looking at our parking design. I like the fact that we're going to be talking about landscaping and cyclists and trails and take a look at that Harbor Green area. That's all I'm suggesting. And so I think maybe we can, hopefully do a wholesome look at the whole parking question, Paul. Hopefully staff will do that.
Okay. Are there further comments from anybody? I'll just conclude then, Mr. Luco, by thanking you for your presentation. Looks like that we still have a fair bit of work to do on designing the parking and on designing the CCV. That work is yet to come, and I know that our staff will take this detailed presentation that you've put together and consider the comments that you've made and your input as they do that work. All public input is logged and taken seriously, and certainly we'll be taking what you've had to say here in your report seriously. And I know our staff is going to be coming back in the coming weeks and months with details to show us how we're going to rework this whole area to accommodate parking and the CCV and pedestrians and accessibility and all those things. So thank you very much for your time this evening, and yeah, thank you.
Okay, and just final thank you for the time. And the last conversations have been simply exactly about what I'm talking about. Data before decisions. Get the data and make the decision. Thank you.
Great, thanks very much.
Appreciate it.
Okay, that moves us then on to our second delegation, which is from Christine McDonald and Pam Hillier on 211 Ontario. And I see Christine there.
Good evening, Mayor Charbonneau and council members. Thank you for the time tonight. Pam is here as well too, and she'll advance the slides. Just a quick introduction. I wanted to let you all know that recently, really, it was in relation to the work of the Saugeen Shores Attainable Housing Task Force, but it was highlighted that it might be helpful to talk about what 211 services are available in Saugeen Shores across Bruce County. And I thank Councillor Grace for asking us to do that. So on to the next slide. It just really is to highlight the relationship that Bruce County and Community Connections, our 211 Central East partner, have had for over a decade, probably approaching 2 decades. When we first started working together, it was 211 Ontario and has since expanded across Canada, actually. So you'll see this slide highlights what Bruce County contracts for Community Connections to provide across the County of Bruce year after year, including our database and online directories, the 211 service where people can call in, and a number of other data reporting and some specialized programs that I'll let Pam go into more detail about. And I'll pass it over to you, Pam.
Thank you, Christine. So first of all, I'll just start with what the 3-digit dialing code is, in that the CRTC approves the special dialing access for special services. So a good example here is with 211 and 911, making it very easy for people to know if you need essential services, you dial 211, and if you're in a life-threatening emergency, you call 911. In Ontario, we have a structure. We have a head office. That's the transfer payment agency receiving funding through the Ministry of Children, Community and Social Services, and they provide coordination for 6 independent call centers. We're integrated with technology that allows us to act as a single call center for the province, being really efficient and streamlining access for citizens in need of information. Our region is the green map, and hence why I'm here today. So as a provincial call center, my work is the resources in that green map area, as well as things like this and doing community engagement and awareness activities. So really simple for 211, we do 3 things. We have a call center. We maintain a database of resources that the call center uses to make referrals and connections. And we track why people call, what service gaps there are, and we report those to our funders such as Bruce County, United Ways, and many others. So just to give you a sense that the call center is a little bit different than a typical inbound call center. So on the left, you'll see the call comes in. And if someone needs utility assistance, they probably need other services. So our staff will do a bit of an assessment, how, what caused this issue to happen, those kinds of things. And we may just provide information, assistance with how programs work. We may do some advocacy and follow-up for those that are vulnerable. And then we track all the needs, not the information about the person themselves, but just what happened in that call, the referrals we've made to other organizations, and we may even have a call with another agency with the caller to make sure they get connected to those supports. So our main job is to make sure the callers understand what to do next. If there's someone that's at risk, we make sure we do a follow-up, and then we make sure we make those additional connections when we do that follow-up call. The resource database is in the challenge of COVID has been our biggest work and the biggest hurdle in connecting with the agencies to keeping up with those changes that have occurred in the last year. So we're trying to do our best with that. And there's a provincial website, 211 Ontario, a national website, but we also do a lot of custom work. And Bruce Grey community information was customized by the staff at both Grey and Bruce counties and what made the most sense to be presented in that database and that website. And last year, I guess it was 2 years ago now, with Through United Way, we did some work on this newcomer information portal that translates in real time a set of specialized information for newcomers in Bruce and Grey. So just a couple of examples there. Some of the real meat and potatoes is around those caller needs. This is just a snapshot of a dashboard that we have online. You can see at this point in time, there's 1,700 calls from Bruce, and you can easily see the top needs. In the next one, I actually drilled down into Saugeen Shores. So at this point in time, there had been 293 call reports taken with housing showing as the top need from those callers. Other work we're involved in Bruce and Grey is emergency response. So we support both upper tier municipalities and any lower tier municipalities for public inquiry should they need that help. This is a list of some of those examples that we've been involved in. Most times when an event happens, we're not needed, but we're always here to help if should something happen that they need that extra public inquiry support. The kinds of calls we get are really around mostly related to social determinants of health, so income, housing, violence issues, things like that. Some of our examples are, and work we've been doing in community is reducing repeat calls to 911. We've got a partnership in Simcoe and Grey County for the last 2 years where paramedics that go out on 911 calls and they come across a family or an individual with complex needs. They fill out this referral form electronically. It comes into our system and our navigators make an outbound call. We then report back to the paramedic program manager what happened during that outbound call. And we're able to connect about 50% of those patients to additional community services. Simcoe County was able to do an analysis of the patients referred to 211 by the paramedics, and they've demonstrated a 28% reduction in repeat calls to 911 for those patients because we're connecting them to the services in their community. 211 is not making this magic happen. It's the services that work in the communities that are making this happen. And this year, we're really excited with the new Bruce Paramedicine Referral Program launching to begin this same work in Bruce County. So we haven't started yet. We're just getting the process in place, but we're really looking forward to just doing some additional supports to the most vulnerable people. And the last thing I'll talk about is around patients. So in South Georgian Bay area, where I'm based, we started with our local family health team, where physicians realizing that families and individuals living in poverty often can't get better because they're so focused on the challenges they're facing to look after themselves. We established a referral process, again, electronically with the patient's consent. And then we've added these blue areas, some additional kind of support for those patients because we know they're really vulnerable. So we're doing income and social isolation screening. We're doing empowerment conversations, helping them to get and reinforce the need to connect with the services. We may be doing more case conferencing with these patients. We may be calling their Ontario Works worker with the patient to find out about other support. So very similar. The cool thing here is that we're doing that report back to the physician, and that report gets scanned into the electronic health record. So when that patient comes back to their care provider, they can also reinforce those extra supports as they need them. So these kinds of things show the clinicians what happened, where did they go, what other referrals were needed. And this is just a quick snapshot of the kinds of referrals. So physicians referring to us for financial, housing, food, social isolation. So it's really demonstrating a partnership in the work we're doing within healthcare. And I'll just close with just three examples of the kinds of calls we get. The first being related to hydro being disconnected. They've applied for funding. They've not been called back. They don't know what to do. Another that their father needs dental assistance, his teeth are bad, he's having trouble eating. and then being served legal papers. They're just not sure. People are often blindsided by things that happen in their life, and it's just having that person to call and get that direction. Thank you.
All right. Yeah. Thank you very much, Pamela and Christine. And we'll just going to scroll out here. There we go. Now I can see everybody. That's better. All right. So we'll ask if there's any questions or comments. I see the Vice Deputy Mayor, and then I'll get Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mine's really a comment. I want to thank Councillor Grace for making this happen this evening. And, you know, I know Attainable Housing Task Force 211 referral program came up with our discussions. And I have to admit, I wasn't really that much aware of 211. I know I should have been, but I wasn't. But I know a whole lot more about it now. And Councillor Grace pounced on it and said, let's have a presentation presented, and here we are tonight. So thanks, Christine and Pamela, and thank you, Councillor Grace, for making this happen. And you've created a real good awareness for our community. And one of the questions I did have, probably, I suppose it's to you, Pamela, is, you know, when I think it was slide 6 or 7, but you talked about the 290 callers from Saugeen Shores, I think you said. I wrote it down. Over what period of time would that have taken place, those 290 callers?
That looks like it was about the last 12 months.
So in 12-month period. Mm-hmm. And housing was one of the main, housing, and I guess the food security program referrals were the two main ones.
Looks like
housing and health.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, I was just so 290 phone calls for Saugeen Shores residents. And would that be different, 290 different clients, do you think?
It's hard to tell right now. We are modifying our technology to be able to identify when we have repeat callers, but right now they would be considered individual.
Okay, thanks for the great work you do, and it's a wonderful program. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Pam and Christine, for coming in so quickly when I asked you to do it, and being gracious enough to put this together. If I'm correct, this Thursday, February 11th, is 211 Awareness Day. Is that right?
It's actually tomorrow, the 11th.
Oh, tomorrow is, okay. For some reason I had the 11th, but that's even better timing. It was really important to the homelessness and poverty support subcommittee that the Vice Deputy Mayor referred to, that was part of our an extension of our Attainable Housing Committee, that we try to do whatever we can to support awareness of this really valuable resource. I mean, your presentation, the amount of support that comes through the paramedic connection, the physician referral looping, all of that is so impressive. My question, I guess, is other than providing awareness, social media promotion, which I believe our communication staff is going to be doing as a result of this presentation, what can lower tier communities do to support you? What are some other ways that we may be able to help you? I know the other thing I want to mention is that our police services, our chief, Kevin Zettel, was on our subcommittee, and that they're doing everything they can to promote 211 and provide that information to people who need that. So what could we do as a lower tier municipality to help maybe promote this more?
Thank you. That's a good question. And I just want to apologize. You are right. Thursday is the 11th. It's late in the evening for me, so I'm sorry about that. You're correct. I think the challenge we have with mainstream media is that the people that need us the most are not often on social media, where it's the cheapest and most broader reach. And I think the work that the agencies are doing in the community, the service providers that are talking and connecting with individuals in your community is probably the most effective way. Definitely through police, anyone in a uniform, that is an authority and deemed as a good referral, right? That to call. So I think that it's a hard community to reach, and I think it's primarily through churches and organizations such as that would be a good. We have lots of materials we can ship you, so we can send you out if you want to do a little program and do some outreach work. We've got anything like that would be appreciated.
Yeah, Councilor Grace.
Mr. Mayor, we did receive Maria Bertrand of the Adult Learning Center in town was able to connect and get a lot of materials for us, the cards, the information cards. So we have a stack of those at our police department, and we have, I've distributed those to a number of agencies in town. So we'll keep doing that and making sure everybody's got that information. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there further comments? Well, thanks very much, Christine and Pamela. The service you guys are providing through 211 is obviously pretty critical to our community, a lot of people in our community and across our region and beyond. And so thanks very much. It's funny, we often talk a lot about the things we need to do to help people in our community, but what we don't talk about enough about sometimes is what we're already doing. And 211 is one of those things that we're already doing that more people need to know about because it's already there. It's a great service and expanding all the time. And so I'm hopeful that through this, a few more people become aware. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And then that moves us on to our third delegation from Paul Wagner of the United Way of Bruce Gray, and he's here to talk to us about food security in Saugeen Shores. Mr. Wagner.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and members of council. Just a little note about 211. I work with lots of food banks and meal programs, and they're constantly using the 211 services. It's an excellent program. So we'll just get everything set up here, and hopefully you see what I see.
We see it.
Perfect. So good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to discuss food insecurity in Saugeen Shores this evening. Food insecurity is largely a hidden issue for most people. So I'd like to devote the time that we have to discussing a tool that's been created to measure the size and the scope of this issue, not only for Saugeen Shores, but also for our larger region as well. Currently in Grey Bruce, we have 22 food banks, 16 meal programs, 15 community gardens. And although due to COVID-19, only the food banks are operating at 100%. The challenges that these organizations face are many. The area they cover is as large as the GTA. Most organizations have evolved independently, and connections and shared knowledge are not as developed as it could be. But of the 50 plus organizations, only a handful of them have paid staff. So most of them are run by hardworking but overstretched volunteers. These organizations suffer from a loss of institutional knowledge when volunteers leave or are burnt out. We lack any kind of permanent or reliable and organized logistics between the organizations. Stigma and small town dynamics also hinder vulnerable people from making full use of the available resources. But perhaps most importantly, most people and decision makers are largely unaware of the size and the scope of the issue. When they think about it, they only think about food banks typically, which despite all of the good work that they do, really is only part of the solution and just a Band-Aid. In order to draw attention to food insecurity, we need to educate and correct misconceptions. A tool is needed. Previously, the only tool that was available to us were the hunger reports. They were created by United Way with the assistance of the individual food groups. The problem was that these reports were only produced every other year and only looked in the rearview mirror. To change people's perceptions, we needed something that was current, something that could capture trends, and something that looked at all of the groups, not just the food banks. The result was a website called foodbrucegray.com. What is it? Quite simply, it's a tool, a data collection website. Data is easy to input, the data points are easy to view and analyze, and it can be updated monthly. The overstretched volunteers are already collecting most of the information, so the website doesn't create any more work for them. This unique tool makes starting conversations about food insecurity and who needs help much easier. Where did it come from? Well, thanks to the United Way of Bruce Gray and the staff of the Nuclear Innovation Institute, they worked with the people at NPX who took the concept that they had and implemented it. In August of last year was when the first presentation was done, and by the middle of October, it was running. To assist this very remarkable achievement, Bruce Power and the community foundations also helped with support and some funding for it. The data entry screens are easy to use for food banks, meal programs, and community gardens. The website can accommodate members who collect all of the information or only some of the data points. It's our hope moving forward that not only will we'll get everybody entering all of the data points, but we'll eventually add more as well. But it was important from the beginning that we kept it as simple as possible. The first graph that you can see shows the contribution of the meal programs. You can see that the number of meal programs prepared in 2020 was 130,000 meals. To put that in perspective, that's a 300% increase over what was done in 2019. The demand for the frozen and hot meal programs grew exponentially during the first wave of the pandemic and has continued at that level. All of these programs work very closely with public health to deliver services that help many food insecure people. The plateauing of the graph has more to do with the maximizing of capacity than it does with a leveling off of demand. The next screen shows the amount of food that the meal programs were able to use that would have been wasted if not for the food rescue programs. If you're not sure what food rescue is, food rescue works with grocery stores, farmers, and takes surplus food that was previously unsellable. It's safe, and they deliver it to meal programs and food banks. The bulk of the donations, like I said, are coming from farmers and grocery stores so far. So that's 41,000 kilograms of food in 2020. This screen shows the amount of food that's being distributed by food banks and the number of households that are being assisted. It's worth noting that national statistics say that only 1 in 4 people who should use a food bank actually does. Food bank use was relatively stable during the first portion of the COVID outbreak when the CERB was in place. It's important to remember that food insecurity is the direct result of poverty and the lack of affordable and safe housing. When people have to spend between 80 and 100% of their available income just for rent, it leaves very little money for food. The food bank's demographic screen shows income sources and age breakdown for the clients. The more information this tool can provide for decision makers like you, the more effective the tool will be. The first graph shows the primary income sources for food bank clients. The bottom graph shows the age demographics across the 2 counties. It is possible to select individual food banks and meal programs using the small box that's in the corner there. So of the 50+ groups, you can go in and actually take a look at any one of the contributing members. And that's true for any of the 6 graphic screens. This next screen shows fresh produce. The pandemic precautions really limited the contributions from community gardens in 2020. Most of the data that you see there was from donations by local farmers. By the time the volunteers were able to access their gardens in 2020, it was too late for many of the groups to operate. In addition, until October, they really had no way to measure the contribution that they were making. However, Bruce Power and the United Way have purchased portable scales that they all have, and we're looking for a big rebound in 2021. Many of the food groups have only just started the tractor volunteer hours. The numbers are staggering, especially when you take into account that the vast majority of volunteers are senior citizens, the most vulnerable age demographic during the pandemic. Fortunately, public health has been providing great instructions and protocols to allow them to continue to provide their services during the pandemic. The reaction to this tool, which started out just in Grey Bruce, has been very, very large. The Tamarack Institute recently ran a feature story on the website, and it's generated interest from all across the country. We've already had one meeting with the city of Edmonton, and they've requested another to discuss using a version of the program for their food programs. The region of Windsor-Essex is similarly interested. It will also be the centerpiece of a presentation at a global food security conference in Toronto this week. Locally, every mayor, chief, provincial representative, and both federal MPs in the region have been sent instructions and created as members in this website. We've also invited all the local media organizations to make use of this tool as well. Organizations are already using the data that is collected by it. We were able to provide a local company who wanted to support children with food insecurity needs, and the website data gave us that information so they could roll out their project very quickly. A similar project to deliver socks to vulnerable children was also able to identify the communities with the greatest needs from the website. Many of the food organizations themselves have also used this information for grant applications and for reports to their boards. The challenges that we face for 2021, we need help. We've gotten cooperation from all of the operating meal programs and the community gardens, but only 2/3 of the food banks so far. To really make this work, we need all the groups to report monthly so that you can see where the problems are and how much of an impact your community partners are making. Sorry about that, lost my mouse for a second. There we go. The issue of food security needs everyone to continue and improve collaboration between all the organizations in our communities. I've kind of taken a long route to get back to food insecurity in Saugeen Shores. To really impact food security here, we need to improve collaboration between all of the food organizations. We need everyone to contribute their data and to share the data so the tool becomes really effective. We need to look at expanding community gardens and use the food to support meal programs and food banks in the area. We need to divert more and more usable food from being wasted through expanding food rescue programs. There are volunteer groups and other Bruce Grey communities that can help with programs to improve knowledge of healthier choices for food insecure people. And we need to build awareness because many people have no idea of the size and scope of this issue, not only in Saugeen Shores or Bruce Grey. I'd like to say thank you for the opportunity to present to you this evening. And if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them for you.
Thanks very much. Paul, are there questions or comments from members of the committee? Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much, Paul, for this presentation. It's such an exciting and inspirational program. And it's certainly a topic that came up as an area of study within our poverty and homelessness, poverty support and homelessness subcommittee of the Attainable Housing Task Force, and in Saugeen Shores, and the parallel or the comment, the observation that you made about the link between food security and lack of affordable housing was something that we identified as well in our work on that committee. But this is just a fantastic application and a tool for us to use. And congratulations on all your work on that. And I know many members of our community really want to know how they can help to support those who are suffering from food insecurity. And this will, I think, go a long way towards making that happen. Thanks a lot.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Councillor Smith and then Councillor Mayette.
Thank you. And I would also like to extend my appreciation to Paul for bringing us this information. One of the statistics that you referenced that stands out to me is I think you mentioned 1 in 4 individuals who should be or ought to be using the food bank actually are. And I'd love if you could correct that, because I'm suspecting I might be wrong on that. Is that accurate?
Unfortunately, it is accurate. 1 in 4 people, there's all kinds of reasons for it. Some have to do with stigma. Some have to do, anecdotally speaking to a lot of clients throughout the counties, A lot of senior citizens say, well, there's people who need help far more than I do. One lady who made that comment to me was eating cat food. And it was a very, very powerful statement. Again, it's lots of stigma, and it's a lot of the fact that people don't really see food insecurity. They see how wealthy our communities are, and they don't see people that are experiencing food insecurity.
Well, I can tell you, much like Councillor Grace, there are a number of people in this community in particular who are really passionate about finding ways to reach those other 3 people who aren't using the services that are available. For example, we started early in the pandemic. There were a number of communities who did something like this, but we had a food pantry that was donate at your own and use at your own. And we found it tremendously successful because there was no stigma attached to it. You could just, use it at your leisure. There was no one monitoring it. And I guess what I would love is ways in which we can help reduce that stigma. If there's anything we as a community, either members or as a municipality, can do to share that message. We have a very talented communications team that might be able to put some messaging around what's available in terms of supports and directing people to 211 as well.
Yeah, everything that we can do would help. 211's been a great resource, letting people be aware of it, and then being consciously aware of the stigma that some people have. A lot of people feel like they're a failure if they need to get help. And one elderly client said to me, there's lots of people who need it more than I do. We said, well, we've helped them. It's your turn now. So the more things that we can do to make people feel comfortable getting that help will make a huge difference.
Thank you, Councillor Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. Thanks very much, Paul. I've seen a version of this presentation a few weeks ago at our United Way board meeting, and it really hits home. And I just would like to reiterate what you brought up, which is what makes it successful is the quality of the data. And because we only have 2/3 of the food bank organizations voluntarily putting the data into this program, we're not getting the whole picture. And unfortunately, the Saugeen Shores Food Bank is one of them that is not necessarily participating fully in the data input here. And we do have quite an active food bank in Saugeen Shores. So it's hopeful that through this, we can get the message out that it's important for all of the organizations that contribute to lessening food insecurity in our region can collaborate on an initiative like this that was brought together by the Nuclear Innovation Institute, because the quality of the output is only good as the data that goes in, right? And there's a lot of things going on, but if they stay below the radar, they can't get supported. So once again, thanks a lot, and it was nice to see you again, Paul.
Yeah, no, appreciate the opportunity. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Further comments? Well, thanks very much, Paul. I did get the link to the access that you sent out to mayors, and had a look at the site, and appreciated that opportunity to get a look at it. Really is, when you get into it, really is a really robust platform, and really interesting to examine. One thing I wonder, I think it would be good if we could plug this more permanently into our administration than through the mayor. And I wonder if the United Way is open to having somebody from our staff reach out to you for a more permanent login, so that we could establish a login for the town that would sort of persist for a long time, rather than run the risk of getting lost as politicians come and go. Is that something that you'd be open to?
Oh, definitely. Again, anything that we can do to help share the information, we're willing to do. And NPX and the Nuclear Innovation Institute did a tremendous job on this. So again, it doesn't belong to us, it belongs to everybody. So we're more than happy to share it.
No, those guys, NPX and Bruce Power, have given a tremendous amount of support to the food banks and to the United Way in the last several months. And this is just one example of that horsepower they've added, which has been so productive and positive. So anyway, we really appreciate the work the United Way has done to put this tool together. And I think what we can commit to is to use it and to incorporate it into our planning, and and identify where those gaps are so that we can better serve those needs of the folks that all those volunteers with all those food organizations and you folks at the United Way are working so hard to serve right now. So anyway, thanks very much for your presentation, Paul. We appreciate you giving us this time.
Excellent. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
All right. Have a good
Good
night.
evening.
Okay, so that moves us then on to, we have no public meetings, so we're on to reports of municipal officers and committees. And 7.3, we have 3 infrastructure and development reports. And the first one is a staff report on speed limit modification request policy and the Director of Infrastructure and Development.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. Road speed design takes into account many variables, and because of this, the TMP recommends using an industry standard approach to responding to requests to lower or raise speed limits. The spreadsheet and guideline is prepared by the Transportation Association of Canada, and it's proposed to be used throughout Saugeen Shores. Staff will use this tool in combination with local knowledge and experiences within the area to respond to these requests. The director will be empowered to provide a more detailed review of the road and post the speed limit when deemed necessary. Many of the currently identified streets will be addressed in the blanket change of the 40 km/h within the urban areas. A more detailed review will also be done on concession 4, as well as within those transition areas where we have the speed limits that go from 80 to 40. And those will be part of the report coming forward as part of the traffic bylaw update. With that, I can answer any questions.
Thank you. There's a recommendation. I'll read it, then we can take questions or comments. It's recommended that council approve the speed limit modification policy as presented. Questions or comments? Councillor Mayat.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, thank you, Amanda, for this this policy introduction. And I think it's really good that we're going to have a tool that we can use in order to make the analysis that's required instead of just responding to requests from citizens or even councillors. But it is important to note, and you said it in your introduction, that local knowledge and experience in conjunction with verifiable data and hard or guidelines are what we can use. That sometimes just trying to do it strictly by a rule-based system, it doesn't necessarily always take into account what is best for the area and for the people that live in these specific areas. And I know there's a table here, and the table has highlighted a number of areas, and I've been assured by you today, and just like 2 weeks ago, that we're looking at the policy and not those specifics, that they will come back later and we'll be able to debate the merits of those on their own. So thank you for the.
Thank you, Vice Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and Councillor Matt, you stole some of my words, and I'm glad you said it, because I think that local knowledge is really important, and concession 4 was mentioned by our Director of Infrastructure a second ago, and I'm pleased. I think I heard her say that it empowers staff to take another look. There's an 80 kilometer zone there. I'm not getting into specifics. I know we're talking about the policy tonight, and it's a scientific approach, and I support that. And Amanda, you've done a great job on this, and I think that this is something that's really, really needed, and it'll take some of the guesswork out of it. I don't know whether I can support the recommendation as is, because I would like to see the policy, the next few pages, speed limit modification policy really doesn't speak to, at least I couldn't, maybe I'm missing it, but I don't see where the staff is empowered to use that local knowledge. And I'm referring to concession 4 and that brow of the hill where it's 80 kilometers and we proposing 70 or whatever. And, I still believe it should be a 60. So is that what you're saying, Amanda? Like that, with a situation like, I'm just going to use that as an example. Again, scientifically determining is perfect. I totally support it, but I just wonder if it should be beefed up, the policy a little bit, Mr. Mayor, in terms of, putting that wording right in there, that local knowledge, in addition to the, the industry standard, Canada-wide is a good program. The automated speed limit guidelines, and I see how you've done your testing. There will be doing the testing with the policy, but I would like to see specific information in the policy about what you just said, because I don't want that to slip through the cracks in terms of that as an example with concession 4, that brow of the hill where the trail crosses the road. That to me is a real hazard, and I'm not convinced at all that that should be an 80 or even a 70. I'm convinced it should be a 60. So, Mr. Mayor, is that something we could, Amanda, maybe I'll ask you, is that something we could put right in that policy? Because I'm not sure I can agree to the recommendations as it's written. I'd like to see it beefed up a little bit about the local knowledge and empowerment question.
The director.
Thank you, and through you, that's why I mentioned it in my introduction. Thank you for the comments, specifically Vice Deputy Mayor Mayette about concession 4 in our discussion over the last couple of days. I will update the policy to include that when it comes back to council. So my thought is the sentence will be something to the effect that the director will, at her or his direction or discretion, will be able to review the intersection or street in further detail as determined to be necessary or directed by council. Something to that effect that gives me that ability to go further into the review.
And that's perfect. And again, I appreciate that. And I want to thank you. These next 3 reports, Amanda, are extremely well done. And again, making that scientific determination is important. And these are coming on in front of us for approval. And I support what you're doing. I think you're doing great work with these 3 policies.
Okay, further comments? I think that it's the important thing to remember is that a speed limit is a safety feature of the road. And when you're developing a safety feature, you need to really pay attention to that expert advice and the expert knowledge and the design and the functionality, just like you would with designing any other safety feature, designing the road itself. So this policy gives us the opportunity and the ability in a clear way that we can communicate to the public how we're going to go through that process and how we're going to establish that those speed limits in a detailed and scientific way. And then, of course, always no speed limit changes without coming to council. And if you want to talk about community knowledge, this is where it comes into play. And if councils wants to do something that's different from what's recommended, it's entirely empowered to do that for whatever reason it chooses. And so we have that balance. We have our experts using this process, telling us, here's how you design this safety feature in a way that we think is best. And then you have the council, whose role is to overlay community knowledge onto that and decide what makes the most sense. So I think this gives us a good open process. And the one I would say the same thing as I said a couple of weeks ago with the policy we were considering then. I hope, and not just with this one, but with all 3, that we can find a good way to package these up and show them to the public up front on our website, so they don't have to find them on an agenda somewhere, so that they can see this is how we do this. You make a request for a speed limit change. This is the process we're going to go through. And so everybody knows, and there's no mystery about it, and everyone will be on the same page. And because I know we all get lots of requests for stuff like this, and it would be great to have a spot on the website to refer people to. So anyway, you've heard the recommendation. I guess I'll ask all in favor. It's carried. Okay, that moves us then on to the second report, which is a staff report on the roundabout feasibility policy and the director.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. Roundabouts are seen as a good alternative to traffic signals when considering it through a cost-benefit analysis. This is because of their increased safety, reduced collision severity, ability to move traffic better, than the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, and reduced life cycle maintenance costs. Staff have proposed to use the attached screening tool to analyze the use of roundabouts in different situations. In most cases, staff will look to engage a traffic engineering firm to prepare a detailed evaluation after the use of the screening tool to determine if a roundabout is the preferred alternative at the intersection. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Then there is a recommendation that council approve the roundabout feasibility policy as presented. Questions or comments? The Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for this report, Amanda. I've been receiving lots of calls and questions about what we're going to do with the roundabout policy. And I keep telling everybody to tune into our municipal council meetings. And if they have any questions, contact you. they're really interested in what we're going to do because of exactly what you said, the traffic calming, the safety aspects. It's all very new and informative, and thank you very much.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Further comments from members? I don't see any, so all in favor? That's carried. And then that moves us on to the third report, staff report on traffic calming implementation policy and the director.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. This is the fourth and final policy that was recommended out of the Transportation Master Plan that would affect the traffic bylaw. So I have presented these all together and in the hopes that we can move forward with a traffic bylaw update before Canada Day. So traffic calming measures are engineered solutions to affect driver behavior. They are typically used in areas where people are believed to be speeding or shortcutting through residential neighborhoods. There are many things to take into account when implementing these measures, such as winter operations, cyclists, pedestrians, and unintended consequences, like when you push traffic from one residential street to another because you've put speed bumps in or more stop signs. So staff will work directly with the residents that are affected through this policy, through surveys and public information centers to understand the needs and the concerns, as well as to determine the measures that would be applicable to be used within the situation. Once that work is done with the public and design concepts are created, then staff will come back to council with a recommendation, which typically would be part of the next year's budget considerations.
Okay, thank you. So the recommendation is that council approve the traffic calming implementation policy as presented. Questions or comments? Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Amanda, for this report and all of the reports and the policies. I'm really happy to see the level of solicitation of public input and public engagement in these policies. I do have two questions. One is about the 2021-22 streets that were listed for study. And putting on my Southampton councillor hat here, I noticed that there's only one of the Southampton streets that's listed for study in 2021, and that's Peel Street. And there are others, all the other ones are for 2022. And I think the list that you have here is certainly needed. But I wonder if you could say something about what kinds of measures you'll be using in the next couple of years during that study period. I think probably for all the streets that are listed here. What kinds of traffic calming measures are available to you to use?
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor, there are two. The first is that our traffic counter, we have the ability to put up the "Your Speed Is" sign, so we can use that when we're counting traffic and speed on these measures, and that is the delay is so that we can get the proper numbers on these streets to look at the traffic calming measures. And the second thing is public education. That's a big piece the Transportation Master Plan talks about when it comes to traffic calming tools. And so I've talked to Chief Zettel as well as the Director of Strategic Initiatives to work on a communications campaign, and the communications officer, Andy, Jessica and I will work together to put some information out about safe driving and speeding in that throughout the summer period.
That's great. I have one other question, Mr. Mayor, and that's specifically referring to in the section on resident support. There's a statement that says, if resident support is not attained for whatever the traffic calming measure that's suggested, the request will be denied regardless of the prioritization score, which I assume is staff's analysis of how how high priority this is. I guess, I'm a big supporter of having resident input and resident support, but I'm uncomfortable with the finality of that statement, that the request will be denied regardless of the prioritization score, because what I'd like to see and as a draft or as an amendment to this is that there's some way to ensure that if resident support is not there, that the town is protected from liability. That our only measure of determining whether a traffic calming measure that's recommended by experts, that there's some way of ensuring that that will occur, or at least be seriously considered. Could you comment on that? I know it's sort of a roundabout question, and I sent it to you earlier. Hopefully to be a little more clear in that version.
Sure. Thank you. And through you, Mr. Mayor, I can add a sentence in there that the same as what we have in the stop sign, that sort of at the discretion of the director. I think in that instance, if we have, say, we've decided to put in a raised intersection and we don't get support from the residents for that because they just want a stop sign, then I think what we could do is come back to council and say, this is what the professionals or engineering staff are recommending. We don't have resident support, but we would like to move forward and let that be the at my discretion. If I think that that's the right answer, and then bring it back to council for debate and acceptance.
I think that that's something that you could work right into the policy, Amanda. I mean, that sounds like a situation where mediation by council would be required, where you have a situation where the public is opposed to a solution which makes sense. I think in that case, council, because it will obviously be it's a hypothetical situation, but I suspect it will be a politically sensitive situation. And so I think I would write that right into the policy. In that situation, the matter will be decided. It will be referred to council for a decision.
Thank you.
Thank you. Will do.
Is there, yeah, Councilor Myatt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, Amanda, thanks for the presentation. Once again, it encompasses a lot of things, and that's good. One of the things that I was looking for in there was something around seasonal calming measures. So there may be streets that have particularly high speed rates or detour rates on them in the summertime when the town is full of tourists and people are visiting the beach area, like Harbor Street or North Shore Road or Huron Street comes to mind when there's lots of people in those areas, whereas in the wintertime, there isn't as many people using those roads and you don't necessarily need those calming measures. And I wonder if there's such a thing as seasonal speed bumps. I know I've seen these sort of rubberized jobs that go in the road, and then presumably they can take them back up in the end of November when the snow plows aren't going to rip them up off the road. And is that's something that's been contemplated in here? And just an add-on to that is I'm glad you haven't put speed limit signs, because I think we've heard it said many times in this council is that signs don't change behaviors. And I think that's been demonstrated by the 30-kilometer-an-hour signs on North Shore Road. It hasn't had the desired effect. I do not believe when I hear from residents down there that traffic has not calmed at all because of those speed limit signs. But comment on, if you could, on seasonal application of calming measures.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Mayor, the only seasonal one that I know about, or I guess there would be two. One is the speed cushion, which is a rubber speed bump that you would take out for in the fall. It's bolted down into the road for the summer events or summer season. The other thing is changing roads from vehicular to pedestrian and cyclists only during a season. So in downtown Cambridge, for example, they have a road that during the Saturdays in the summer, they can pop up bollards and it becomes no access to vehicles. So those would be two options that would be in this toolbox we could look at.
Okay. Okay. Anything further? I don't see anything. You've heard the recommendation. All in favor? That's carried. Okay. Then that moves us on to 7.4 and community services, parks and recreation. And we have three reports there this evening, and the first one is a staff report on an amendment to the Chamber of Commerce lease agreement, and the Director of Community Services.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Mayor, this evening staff are looking for council to amend the existing lease agreement for the Chamber of Commerce to reflect the reduction of square footage at 559 Goddard Street to accommodate municipal tourism staff. Staff have met with the Chamber executives on several occasions to negotiate the contents of the agreement. This agreement reflects a reduction of space as well as utilities, the initiation of bag tags for half a year, and the shared space between the tourism and chamber staff. There will be a reduction of revenue in the community services budget, and that is also indicated within the report.
Thank you. There's a recommendation that council pass a bylaw to amend the existing Chamber of Commerce lease agreement. Questions or comments? The Vice Deputy Mayor and then Councillor Smith.
Mr. Mayor, thank you for your report, Jane, and through you, Mr. Mayor, to Jane. Jane, I'm just wondering, the revenue from the driver licensing bureau, the MTO officer, who receives the revenue for that space?
I'm not sure. I'm assuming that's through the Chamber of Commerce, and it would go through Service Ontario, but I don't see those books, so I can't answer that question. Well,
I just wonder who leases it out and where the revenue goes.
Okay, the lease space is through the Chamber of Commerce.
So they receive the revenue for that space.
Correct.
And is that part of their 40%, that space that they're leasing out then, obviously?
You are correct.
Jane, I'm just curious what the per square footage rate is. How much square footage do they have? Actually, I should have asked this question today. Sorry, I didn't send this to you. Maybe I'm putting you on the spot, but what kind of square footage do the chamber use for their office and for the licensing bureau? I'm just looking at the savings in our budget of $3,000, or pardon me, it's going to cost us $3,000 in less rent and utilities, which indicates to me that 60% they must be paying about $2,000 a year for rent and utilities then, based on your 60-40 split. So if we're only receiving $2,000 for the office space in MTO, so the square footage, they're not paying a lot for square footage. What is the monthly rate, like $200 a month, or?
That is in the agreement that's attached. Their monthly payments are $352.
Sorry, I missed it. Yeah,
that's
$352. Okay. And do you have any? It's the square. I'm sorry, I missed it in the agreement. What's the square footage, Jane, that they're leasing from us?
I'd have to get that amount for you, Mike.
Could you send it to me? I'm just kind of curious what they're paying per square foot. That's all.
The utilities are around $900 a year.
Yep. So if it's $900 a year, then they're paying about. Well, you're saying the numbers just don't quite add up for me. That's all, Jane. But you send me the square footage. I'm just curious what they're paying per square foot. Thanks. That's all.
Okay, I saw Councillor Smith.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. I have two questions. The first is also a sublease question with regard to the, there's a portion of that building that is currently being, I assume, subleased to a separate nuclear supplier. Can you speak a little bit? Is that a tenant of ours, or is that another sublease?
That's another lease with the municipality, so that is separate from this lease.
Great. Can you, my second question through you, Mr. Mayor, is with regard to parking. There are several parking spots on the back of what has been commonly referred to as the police parkette, the former police parkette, in between Keepsakes and Memories. Who are those parking spaces designated to anyone in particular? Are those public parking spaces? Are you aware? It doesn't speak to it in the lease agreement, but it's my understanding that they are currently being used exclusively by the chamber office, and I'm wondering if there will be any discussions going forward of usage of those spaces for both the other tenants and members of the tourism staff.
Through you are right. Historically, they have been used by the staff that utilize that building. I don't recall there being any designated signage there that reflects who they are formally utilized for, but it is not part of the agreement that we provided as far as providing parking spaces for the building.
Thank you.
Okay, further comments? I think that this will be a good opportunity for us to reassess our use of that facility or the needs we have for that facility. A lot is changing right now about how we use office space and what our needs are. with the new of capacity and acceptance of working remotely. So there may be new opportunities to make use of that facility in different ways. The Promation lease was a good one, a good concept. And maybe there are other concepts like that for the municipality to make use. So I think this creates, what I'm getting at is, I think this creates an opportunity for us and to reimagine that facility. So so with that, I will ask all in favor. That's carried. All right, that moves us then on to the second report, which is a staff report on Miramichi Shores Land Development Trail Use Memorandum of Understanding, and the director.
Thank you. And for you, this report this evening is really a housekeeping process for us with this MOU. It's to update the existing agreement to reflect the current owner. The MOU does not impact the design of the trail or the maintenance and allows for future enjoyment for all users. Staff wish to thank the owner for his continued enhancements to the municipal trail system and the strong positive relationship that exists with the landowner and the town.
Thank you. So there's a recommendation that council pass a bylaw to enter into a memorandum of understanding with Miramichi Shores Land Development Limited. Are there questions or comments? Seeing none, then all in favor. That's carried. All right, that moves us then on to the third and final community services report, which is a staff report on Rad Adventures Mountain Bike Camp. The director.
Thank you. And this is a bit of a fun report that we can maybe once start to think back to some normalcy in our lives, but staff is seeking council approval to enter into an agreement with Rad Adventures this summer and fall and to offer a mountain bike camp program. The contractor has offered several programs within Southwestern Ontario with great success. Obviously, COVID protocols will be in place and Rad Adventures will be prepared to pivot their program based on potential changes to the provincial protocols if required. They will be basing themselves in both the Beaner Park, which is next to Nautical Park, as well as Jubilee Park behind the Chantry Senior Center. It's anticipated that this camp will be a welcome addition to the town's complement of programs. Thank you.
Thank you. There's a recommendation that council pass a bylaw to authorize an agreement with 2786803 Ontario Incorporated, or Rad Adventures. Questions or comments? The deputy mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look forward to opportunities to having the kids out and everybody doing something this summer. My question is with regard to facilities. So even at the behind this Chantry Senior Center in Southampton, what do they use for washroom facilities? Are they expected to get across the ditch and the diamonds to get to the washroom facilities at Jubilee Park, or where are they expected to go? Or do we worry about that?
Certainly those details are being worked out between the contractor and with staff right now. And as far as elements, they'll be bringing their own pop-up tents that they'll take up, that they'll put up and take down daily. So washroom facilities are still being worked out to what makes sense logistically.
Thank you very much.
Okay, further comments? My only comment is it sounds pretty cool. Can't wait to see it happening. I think it's going to be a great thing around town this summer. So all in favor? That's carried. Okay. So that moves us on then to communications and petitions for information. There's two items there. Anyone have any comments on either of those? Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess my question is about the letter from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing and the Municipal Modernization Program. Are we planning on applying for some of those funds? It seems like this might be a good fit also for some of the work of the Municipal Innovation Council.
The CAO.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Grace, and through you, Mr. Mayor. Senior staff started meeting last week, generating kind of a list of projects that we think could be potential to apply to the Modernization Fund. We're going to be working tomorrow to sort of refine that list. I had a meeting earlier today with the Municipal Innovation Council about some options related there. So there's definitely some opportunities. One of the things that I'll just make council aware of is that one of the requirements to enter into this, my mind's just going back, I believe it's the third round of funding, is that the funding that the municipality received in 2019 needs to be allocated to projects in order to be eligible to receive any additional funding. So part of the process that staff is looking at right now is to how we allocate. There's about I believe around just over $400,000 that is still in the fund, in the reserve fund that Town of Saugeen Shores had from that 2019 allocation. So we're looking at how we can allocate that money first, and then looking at which projects would be relevant to apply to this next round of funding. So the deadline for this funding source, as you saw, was March 15th. So you can expect to see a report from staff in probably one of the next 2 council meetings to address this and bring it forward.
I would say that it would be unfortunate. I mean, the town of Saugeen Shores has been thoughtful about how it was going to use that modernization funding. And of course, 2020, we may have allocated it in 2020, but other things came up. And I think it will be unfortunate if the province punished us for trying to spend their money wisely rather than quickly. So anyway, my thoughts. Further comments on either of those items? I don't see any. So that moves us then on to reports of department heads. And the first one is an information report on the community improvement plan renewal. Does the director have any comments she wants to make?
Just briefly, thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. We're bringing this to your attention so that you can see that we're starting the process for looking at the CIPs. So you'll see an advertisement put in the newspaper shortly to start the public process.
Very good. Are there any questions about that? The Vice Deputy Mayor?
And just you to Amanda or Kara, I'm not sure who would like to answer this, but the Bruce County Bruce funding program used CIP. Is it fair to assume that without the revised, revamped CIP program that excludes us from applying to the Bruce program, to the Bruce program? Is that one of the reasons that's important to have the CIP program updated in place, because it impacts funding?
Yeah, for you, Mr. Mayor, or I mean, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. The answer to that question, the simple answer to that question is yes. So there is the ability within the Planning Act for us to participate in each other's community improvement plans between the lower tier and the upper tier municipalities. And our community improvement plans related to our downtown areas have expired. So part of what we want to do is get those back in place so that we're eligible to participate in those granting programs.
Okay. And do we know the budget amount, Amanda, in terms of what we've actually budgeted to the CIP program in 2019, 2020?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. For the downtown facade ones or for the economic?
Think about the economic. I know I'm getting off topic a little bit with getting into the economic one, but in terms of funding for motels, hotels, housing, those sorts of things, what was the amount we budgeted for that program? Do you recall?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, in the budget right now, we just have the carryover dollars from previous unspent funds. So we have about 240,000 in the reserve currently.
Okay. Yep.
Further questions or comments? Okay, that's it on that one then. That moves us then on to item 2, an information report on the COVID-19 vaccine planning and the Director of Protective Services. I'll make some comments on this one. Phil, there you are. Phil.
Yeah, just briefly, Mr. Mayor, happy to answer any questions council might have. I will say we created this draft report that may live for the duration of the COVID pandemic, and we will update it accordingly as more information is learned, as more vaccines come online, as supply is more stable. We'll evolve this plan. We really wanted to take a proactive approach and a supportive approach to Grey Bruce Health Unit. The plan serves to showcase all the buildings in Saugeen Shores that we are offering for use with little notice or a lot of notice and everything in between. And I think it's important I acknowledge our partners in this. The NII and Unifor were both very supportive of creating this plan and offering their facilities for whatever scale of building is needed now or in the future as vaccines become available. The plan serves just to be as ready as we can in Saugeen Shores for local vaccinations to be delivered here.
Thanks, Phil. And I guess I'll just reiterate your point that this really is an effort by Saugeen Shores to be proactive in offering up whatever facilities we can to assist in the regional vaccination effort. And to make it clear, I think, and it's important to make it clear that the town of Saugeen Shores stands ready to support any effort by public health to mitigate the spread of COVID-19 first and foremost, and to distribute vaccines as those vaccines become ready. We want to make sure, obviously, it's in our interest to ensure that our residents have as easy access to vaccines as they possibly can. And I am reassured, and I never had any doubt of it, but that Dr. Era and public health also have that as their strong desire, and that as they are able, they will take us up on whatever facilities and assistance we can provide to get vaccines to our citizens in the most efficient and effective way possible. This is all to say that folks in Saugeen Shores should have absolute confidence in public health's vaccination efforts, and that they themselves are being proactive like we are to get the vaccines here and to get them distributed. And folks should rest assured that public health is leaving no stone unturned like us to make sure folks get these vaccines and are protected. The Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And through you, I just want to thank yourself, Chief Eagleson, and our CEO, Kara, for championing Saugeen Shores as much as you have been to make sure that all of its residents and everybody in the surrounding areas are well looked after during this pandemic. And we know that you have the best interests in mind. And when it does come time, I'm sure that Dr. Era and the rest of the health team will see that Saugeen Shores is a vital place because of the work that you guys have put in.
Thank you. Further comments on this one? Nope. All right. Thanks very much for this, Phil. And then that moves us on to the final one, which is information report on the employment lands update and the Director of Strategic Initiatives.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and through you. This report is providing an update on the continuous work of the town-owned employment lands at the south end of Port Elgin on Concession 6. MHBC planning was retained in August of 2020 to support the advancement of the site, and staff plan to bring a report forward to Council on February 22nd with more details and next step recommendations. Many inquiries continue to come forward for the site as a business park, and we're looking to offer 1 to 1.5 acre lots for sale, and certainly using this as an opportunity and activity for business retention and expansion in our community. Staff are continuing to work on an application with the Ministry of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade for a funding program that we may be eligible to support the preparation of the land for development. So this grant that we are working on the application with our regional advisor may fund upward of 50% of a project to a maximum of 1.5 million. So with that, I am happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. The Vice Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to Jessica. Jessica is a solid report, and I just wondering the MHBC planning consultants. When you're talking about 50%, 1.5 million for water sewer, I think that is absolutely the way to go with our new business park, Lamont Sports Park. I think pumping station and all. Is that what the consultant is recommending? Do you think through your preliminary findings with the consultant, what are they recommending in terms of water sewer for that site?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So we are expecting that report this week. I'm hoping to get that in my hands tomorrow to have a careful review with the CAO and also the Director of Infrastructure and Development. What we have asked the MHBC planning to consider options and to present options and the cost analysis with each, certainly recognizing the elevation and the challenge of the property. What I have heard is the importance of having a fully serviced site available to be able to have those parcels ready to sell. And that creates just less barrier for any sort of industry that may be looking to land and expand.
That's what they're saying in your preliminary discussions. The water sewer hookup, pumping station, et cetera, is the best route to go. And I think that's a positive. I know it's expensive, but through you, Mr. Mayor, and as Jessica or Kara, this grant through the Minister of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade, 1.5 million. Rehabilitating a quarry into what we're about to do here at Lamont Sports Park and Business Park, yeah, to me, it's just a wonderful story that you can tell in a grant application. No grants are guaranteed, but I mean, we have to be optimistic. But you feel good about this could be something that we could be successful with 1.5 million for a project like this. I mean, it's just such a good news story to tell in a grant application. So.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, in working with the senior business advisor, who's the regional rep with this program, he has suggested we do have a very strong application and we do have a very strong case. So we are working, the economic development officer, Heather Hyde, and I are advancing that and continuing that conversation. And we're really grateful for the support that we are getting from that business advisor to make sure our application is strong.
Well, good luck with that application, because 1.5 million towards hard services into that area would be just golden for our community, and one step further towards developing that whole piece of property. So good luck with that. Give it the best shot.
Yeah, good luck to us all. Are there further questions or on this one? Doesn't look like it. All right, thanks very much for your report, Jess. And that, I believe, brings us to the end of the Committee of the Whole agenda. So we'll take announcements by members and the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As we're about to leave this current round of COVID restrictions, I just want to keep reminding people that masks are very, very safe and mandatory. Keep washing your hands and keep your distance.
Vice Deputy Mayor.
I just wanted, we do this every year, but I think it's really important to say it. And that's a shout out to our public works staff for, keeping our roads safe. And we've had some pretty significant storms lately, and they're always there, right? They're up early in the morning. They work a lot of long hours, and I don't think we don't have to wait a very long time to have your road plowed in front of your house. And if it is taking a little longer than normal, maybe a machinery breakdown or something. But I just wanted to say shout out to our public works staff for just doing a phenomenal job. They're just a great bunch of employees, and just want to thank them.
Thank you. Town of Saugeen Shores has the best snow removal service anywhere. And then we'll move on to Councillor Schreider.
Nothing tonight. Thank you.
Councillor Smith.
I was surprised we didn't loop in the fastest snow removal company in Bruce County there, Mr. Mayor.
I think I said the best, didn't I? That's on every level.
It might also be the fastest, but okay.
I agree. I'm not arguing.
This evening, I'd just like to give a bit of a plug to the Shore Report, which does not get enough attention. And this week we had on a member from NPX, and we've talked about NPX and NII earlier this evening, and all the great work that they're doing for the community. And I would just encourage our listeners and viewers to plug into the Shore Report and take a listen to all the great things that NPX has coming up in terms of their March break camps. We were the first to release that information.
Thank you. Councillor Rich.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yeah, as things start to open up, remain diligent, and let's keep this moving on the downward trend as we start to do some more normal things again and get out of lockdown. Anyway.
Thank you. Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to thank Dolores Sullivan, Sisters on Huron in Southampton, who over the last couple of weeks has been organizing and collecting a lot of warm women's winter coats, and has connected with the Bruce Gray United Way, and has delivered several large collections of those over to Bruce Gray and the United Way, and they're distributing them. So it's a great initiative, and thank you to Dolores and her team.
Thank you. Councillor Carr.
Nothing tonight.
Thank you. Councillor Mayette.
I've been doing not much else but staying home and isolating, as we're all requested to do. But one of the few things I have been able to partake in is taking care of our fish at the fish hatchery, both hatcheries. I've been down to Kincardine and in Port Elgin, and we've got about 100,000 salmon fry that are about 3 or 4 grams right now that are doing exceedingly well. We've also got about 30,000 brown trout eggs just arrived at the Kincardine hatchery that are eyeing up and starting to sprout. So those will be 18 months before they're ready to go. But things are booming at the hatcheries, and that's occupying a lot of my attention these days. So if anybody wants to visit, let me know.
All right, very good. Well, thanks very much, everybody. You've said it all. Nothing more from me. We'll take a mover and seconder to adjourn. Moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Smith. All in favor? Committee of the whole stands adjourned, and we will reconvene at 8:40.
Reached 8:40, you may commence the meeting.
All right, thank you, Linda. And I will call to order this regular council meeting. And the second item on the agenda is disclosures of pecuniary interest. Ask any member if you have one of those you'd like to declare. Seeing none, of course, you can do that anytime if you need to. We have no additions, deletions, or amendments. We have no public meetings, so that moves us on to adoption of minutes. And I have a resolution that council adopt the minutes of the council meeting of January 25, 2021, and note and file the minutes of the committee of the whole meeting of January 25th, 2021, as presented. Question, or is there a mover and seconder? Sorry. Grace and Smith. Questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. That moves us then on to reports of the Committee of the Whole. And the first is a general government report regarding corporate communication strategy. And I have a resolution that council approve the corporate communication strategy 2021 to 2023. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Schreider, seconded by Rich. Questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. That then moves us on to an infrastructure and development report regarding road widening on Shipley Avenue and all-way stop request policy. And I have a resolution that council accept a transfer of land for a road widening along 114 Shipley Avenue, and that council approve the all-way stop sign request policy. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Rich, seconded by Carr. Questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. And that moves us on to bylaws, and there's only one bylaw up for consideration this evening. I have a resolution that the following bylaws are hereby read a first, second, and third time and finally passed and sealed this 8th day of February 2021. 1/8/2021 being a bylaw to authorize the entering into of a cost-sharing agreement with the Corporation of the County of Bruce, and 2/9/2021 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the council meetings of the Corporation of the Town of Saugeen Shores. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Smith, seconded by Rich. Are there any questions or comments? Vice Deputy Mayor?
Mr. Mayor, thank you to Amanda. Amanda, just for the benefit of council, at the last meeting, I talked about, the lack of landscaping dollars in the County Road 25 Phase 3 project, and in Phase 2, actually, dollars missing for landscaping. Can you just bring us up to date in terms of what kind of replacement program will happen with the trees that they've removed, and what kind of report will we see from you and when in terms of landscaping plan for County Road 25?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we will have to bring to you a plan with request for funding for that. At the moment, we've got the consultant putting trees that are okay to be underneath hydro line within this phase, so we can get that pricing to move that piece forward. Right now, we're just looking at replacing the number of trees that were there within this phase as that tendered item. When we get those numbers, then we can apply that to preparing a different plan and bring that back.
Well, thank you, and Amanda. Just to follow up, will the county be responsible for in the contract to replace any of the trees they're removing? Will they be responsible for any of that work?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the section that will be ours to own will be our responsibility to pay for those trees. So this is part of that downloading of part of Bruce Road 25. So everything east of Bruce Road 20 or Bruce Street will be ours, and those will be within our cost sharing part.
I look forward to seeing the landscaping report. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, any further questions? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. And that moves us on to adjournment, and I have a resolution that this regular council meeting of February 8th, 2021 hereby adjourns at 8:44 p.m. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Smith, second by Matheson. All in favor? We stand adjourned.